I am very happy to be here, and today we will have the English as our language. It's actually morning, and it's the first time that we have Reimagine Talks in the morning. So if you are with us, I hope you will start the day with a very, very nice insight, or more than one insight. I am very happy to have with me today, even earlier, I guess, Dr. Luke Sniewski, who I met as a student, actually, because I'm preparing my internship with him. But I discovered so many other things besides being a student. And I will just say that he is a compassionate inquiry facilitator, practitioner. He is working a lot with the body. He is a psychotherapist. He is so many things that he had gathered in a beautiful approach, which is called Somawise, which is our subject today. But I will not talk too much. Good morning, Luke. It's so good to have you here. Morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Yes, it is 8 o'clock here in Central Europe. So I'm enjoying the European summer away from New Zealand for a few months. So that'll be nice.
Wow, that means we share some warmth together, because I'm also in Southeastern Europe. So
yes, and yeah, I'm not taking it for granted, that's for sure. Thank you for having me on, Monica. So it's a pleasure to be here speaking about Somawise.
it's an honor for me to have you here. And if I may, I know we are learning the questioning together, but I will ask you first a few things about you, because Somawise, for me at least, when I read it, it was like a biography. I don't know if that's a biography, but for me, it was very touching. And my guess, it's much more than that. So I would ask you how it started, and even it was a plan to have a Somawise out of our heads, as you say.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I wrote the book over the course of, I think, 7 years, but 8 years ago, when I finished my first book, I sort of vowed and I told myself I would never write another book again, because it was so stressful, it was so challenging. It wasn't a pleasant experience. Very soon after, not very soon, maybe like 2 years after the book, I started finding myself taking notes for what I started imagining as what might be my next book. If I guess the cue that I told myself is, when the world asks me for another book, I'll give it another book. And I was taking notes, and the ideas for Somawise were slowly forming themselves. But what really happened was, when I realized that authenticity and vulnerability are two of the main concepts, two of the main ideas that I talked about in the book, the importance of embracing authenticity and vulnerability, I realized that this couldn't be just another book of a collection of information, a collection of studies, a collection of research from other people. And so I knew that if I wanted to practice what I preach, or actually I knew the importance of practicing what I preached, so I infused the book with my own soul, because I knew that the thread of my own healing journey would provide a backbone for what this process of becoming Somawise is all about. How to reconnect to your body, how to listen to the body's wisdom, and how to find healing and thriving by listening to the language, learning the language, or maybe remembering the language of the human body.
It sounds quite a journey, because that's exactly, I know that our experiences cannot be similar, but when I read it, and I read it in English, and I just revealed the surprise, we will have it in Romanian, guys, soon to come. So when I read it in English, it was more than just observing, because right, you talk about authenticity and vulnerability, but at the same time, we also talk a lot, but we don't realize we talk from our minds, from our cognitive, let's say, perspective. And I'm sure that if we do a market research now, everybody can tell you what is vulnerability, what is authenticity. But if you ask them how they feel it, and it was also a challenge for me, it's not that I'm aware of that. And compassionate inquiry, as you know, for me, it was my home to rediscover this. Something that you also mentioned, it's not something that it's not available to us. The ancient cultures and the ancient practices, they all preach and actually practice listening, not to the words, but to our body. So I guess my next question for you is how we get out from this cognitive approach of listening, because everything has now a cognitive approach. And it's not that it's not good, but sometimes we need to listen more, I would say.
Yeah, I would say it starts with our vocabulary, because when we talk about listening to the body, or what is your body saying, we can listen to the answers both from ourselves and the people that we're listening to, and it'll actually let us know if that person or whether we are speaking from the mind or speaking from the body. And it's important to differentiate, because we've disconnected, and this is the work of Gabor Mate, this is what we learn in compassionate inquiry, that we disconnect from our body as a survival mechanism, as an adaptation. The process of coming back to the body is somewhat uncomfortable, and it requires us to learn or relearn again a new language, the language of sensations, because the body doesn't speak with perceptions and imagery and thoughts. The body speaks very simply with emotions, with sensations. That is the language of the body. And if we find that when we're describing our somatic experience with words that are thoughts and perceptions and interpretations, then we know that we've actually come back up here. And it's useful for us to have that instant feedback. Oh, this is coming from the mind. What is my body actually saying? The body speaks in more objective terms. So rather than, I'll give you an example, rather than, oh, my body feels overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is a perception. Instead, it might be more accurate when we tune into the body. No, there's a heaviness here in my chest, or there's a constriction here in my belly. And those are more objective descriptions of what's happening. And that's also a good sort of measuring stick. The more objective we are, the closer we are to the experience of the body, because the body doesn't have preferences. In the body, things are just happening. There's tension, there's openness, there's constriction, there's heaviness, there's lightness. It just is. And what also happens when we begin to describe our present moment experience anchored in the body, rather than again the imaginary world of thought, where there's judgments, there's labels, there's value systems, there's good, there's bad, there's positive, there's negative. When we begin to describe our experience within the body, what we find is that we're a little more calm, we're a little more accepting, we're a little less reactive, because even describing our experience as, oh, there's tension present. Tension sounds like it's a lot more easy to manage than, oh my gosh, I'm being manipulated right now. Well, to add that word and to add that story creates extra stress on our experience, and it changes the way we relate to the experience. It changes the way we relate to the moment. It changes how we react to the moment. And again, to the body, tension is a lot easier to deal with than this big story that's happening to me.
Yeah, and it escalates our nervous system, right? Because you are talking a lot about this, about how with our mind, eventually, we actually escalate a situation, which is a perfect normal one for us to react in order to defend ourselves. But if we put extra potential danger, let's say, then we are like a little bomb ready to explode.
Yes. Well, the stories of the mind are often far more scary and stressful than what actually happens in real life. And so if we live in our mind, two things happen. Firstly, we are escalating and ruminating and actually creating more stress in our physiology, which makes us more reactive to the world around us because we've got a heightened activated nervous system. The second thing, the second thing that happens, and this is also um, it's not surprising in a way, is that when we think about our worst fears and we begin to react to our worst fears as if they are real, we literally create the thing that we want least. We create our we create our worst fears because we're reacting to the world as if the thoughts in our mind are real. So we start manipulating things and changing things and controlling things in response to this thought. And accidentally, we create exactly what we fear most.
And we also sometimes don't get what we are expecting to get because we are trying to protect, as you said, we try to control, to plan, to be on the spot.
Of course.
And we don't realize what signals we send also to other people because we are in relationship, at least as we are now in this society, but also we are wired to be in relationships.
Yes.
So if we are constantly defending, it's not that the other one will understand, well, maybe he or she is defending because she will get, I'm getting attacked, that's danger. So then we go to rejection. Then we go,
Yes.
oh, nobody wants me. Then we go to
Yes.
sadness, and so on and so on.
Yeah, again, we're accidentally creating these worst case scenarios, these scenarios that we don't actually want. And it's happening beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. This is, as you said, our nervous system is going, that the energetic expression of our nervous system is going to be picked up by the other person because each of us are in antennas. We're walking around and we're transmitting and receiving energy and these different signals from those around us. And this is why you can sometimes walk into a room and say, ooh, this doesn't feel quite right. And we might walk out. You might meet someone that says, my intuition doesn't necessarily think this is a safe place. Or on the opposite, oh wow, this feels really safe. This feels really good. And it's not a cognitive thought. It's the body giving us a cue. Here's the difference. Some people might say that's subconscious. I think that the subconscious cues in our life are only subconscious because we're not paying attention to the body. The body is the subconscious mind. All of our senses are interacting and being contacted by the external environment. And that contact, all of that input that goes into our body, that's 95 to 99% of the processing information of the information that's entering our system. At the end of all that processing, that 95 to 99% of subconscious information, which is really just information that's coming through the body, then we have 1 to 5% that's the conscious thought that says, I will do this, or this is what I think. And the conscious mind thinks it's in charge. But again, 95 to 99% of the stuff that's actually coming into the system is through the body. And it's unconscious because we're disconnected. As soon as we do start learning how to reconnect, this uncomfortable yet very beautiful process of reconnecting to the body, all of a sudden, the things that were unconscious are now conscious, and we can start paying attention, and we notice little things, and we start noticing little things within ourselves, little shifts, little deviations. We notice what anger feels like as sensations before it becomes that overwhelming wave of uncontrollable anger that we have to apologize for, that we have to feel guilty or shameful about. Again, if we're connected to our body, we can feel the progression of some of these emotions when they originate as a sensation. And when we do that, we do something very transformative or potentially transformative for us. We give ourselves choice. Because if it's unconscious, there is no choice. It's a reaction. If we're conscious, we feel it. And that beautiful space between stimulus and response, as Viktor Frankl puts, that is our space for choice. That is our space where we find freedom.
Yeah, wow. And I was listening to you and thinking that I just read the other days about this brain in our guts. which is actually, I think the statistics, because we love statistics, but I think the statistics were saying that for each brain neuron, we have 9 sensor motors, sensor in our guts, which is actually another brain. So if you think here it's 1 and here we have 9, we can imagine how many information that is already available to us we don't get. And it's really nice you mentioned Viktor Frankl, because I'm guessing that's exactly the thing, right? It's not about reaction, because Viktor Frankl, it's calling about the fact, well, this is reality, we cannot change it, and he has his story, but we have the ability to respond, which is different than reaction.
Yes, that is what Michael Brown talks about in the presence process, is that this journey of healing, this journey of coming back to ourselves isn't about feeling better, it's about getting better at feeling. And Viktor Frankl talks about this capacity to respond. I mean, this is why the word is called response ability, our ability to respond. And I think more than anything, you've talked about the gut, and I'm going to talk about that in a second because I think it's an important thing. But when we talk about our ability to respond, we have to understand that you and I and everyone listening and anyone watching this recording later on, if we asked you, or if we asked them, okay, if you could choose between being reactive and knee-jerk reactions and saying things that you have to apologize for later on, or would you rather respond and observe and accept? And every single person will say, well, I'd rather have that. But the challenge is that intellectual acceptance and simply saying, yes, I want that, that's not enough. This is why when we read a book, we're like, wow, I get it. We get that rush of endorphins when we read something so beautiful. We're like, this makes perfect sense. I get it now. The light bulb comes on. But the intellectual acceptance is never enough. Because again, the subconscious somatic drivers, the 95 to 99% of what's actually driving our behaviors is not happening here. It's happening here. So if we don't actually practice being present with those waves of impulses that cause reactions, then we're never going to actually cultivate that capacity, that ability to respond. This is why meditation, to me, is far easier to understand when we view it in that sense, that with meditation and stillness specifically, what we're actually practicing is we're practicing the opposite of reaction. If reacting is at the core of my suffering, at the core of what makes life challenging, at the core of leads to behaviors and responses and actions that I don't necessarily want in my life anymore, then the opposite is what I do in meditation or stillness. I'm going to sit, do nothing, and observe the very same sensations in my body that would typically lead to reaction. And if I can get better at observing these sensations during practice, then I can lean on that skill, lean on that capacity in everyday life, because all of a sudden, okay, I'm stressed. Okay, I've practiced sitting with this. I can notice the tension that just went into my body. If I stay with this, oh, the pain is a little bit bigger than I thought. Oh, okay, but okay, now it's dissolving. Huh, was that it? Was that all that was required? Whereas if we're not conscious to that process of being impacted by stress and staying and sitting with it, that reaction, the mind automatically kicks in. And then all of a sudden we start believing the story of the mind and we start reacting to the mind. That person attacked me. That person did this. Oh, the only way I'm going to fix this is with that chocolate, with that sugar, with that alcohol, with that cigarette, with that porn, whatever it may be. Does this make sense, Monica?
Yeah, for me, it makes total sense. And I would add something and ask you also your perspective, because we hear all that, so it's not like now I hear it. It's exactly what you said before. It's not like now I'm ending this live and starting tomorrow, I will be more aware of my sensations. And it must be acknowledged, it's not easy.
No.
So it's not something that it's, again, an intellectual decision, as you said. It's not like from today I decide to accept everything that happens to me. or that I feel. But it's a process, and there isn't only one way, because you mentioned now meditation. There are many people who cannot meditate, which is nothing wrong. It doesn't mean they cannot reconnect, or there is no other way. And that is why I find your approach and your book wonderful, because there is a lot of techniques and practices that you may choose in order to resonate with you. So I guess I would ask you to tell us also about this kindness in the process, because it's not only you have to meditate 30 minutes a day. And if you do that, that's it. All your problems are solved.
Yes. Yeah, so Somawise is written and designed in a way that it sort of builds awareness of body and connection to self, connection to body from the inside out. So it actually doesn't even start with the practice of meditation. It starts with the lifestyle choices that we're already doing. We're already eating every day, we're already moving every day, and we're already sleeping every day. With Somawise, the invitation is to simply start paying attention to your body before, during, and after some of these lifestyle choices. So whereas eating might have been a mindless decision where, okay, my mind says, oh, I know that this is healthy, so I'm going to eat it. I won't even think about it. I'm just going to be on my phone. I'll eat it and I'll move on. Somawise says, okay, why don't you pay attention? Notice what's happening in your body before the meal. Notice what's happening during the meal as you're eating. Notice how you feel after the meal. When we do this periodic, consistent connection, firstly, we're learning how to anchor our attention in our somatic experience, which is where we want to be paying attention if we want to reconnect to our body. The second thing that's important is that we then get to start listening to the body. Is this actually healthy for my body? I know my mind said that this was healthy for the body, but how did my body actually respond rather than my mind, rather than a thought or a conception or a perception? And we can do this with movement as well. There are many modalities of movement that can often lead to injury if we're not mindful and careful with it. Runners, CrossFit, yoga, some of these certain modalities and certain schools of thought with relation to these, if we're not tending to the body's needs or listening to it, we start carrying shoulder, back, and knee injuries as if they're badges of honor. Like, oh yeah, I'm running every day and this is how my body feels. But your body, that's a distress signal. That's the body saying, no, 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 this isn't working. Something is out of balance and you need to attend to this. Otherwise, this symptom will grow to the point that it's chronic. And so our lifestyle choices are invitations to somatic connection if we allow them to be. That process of connecting from the inside out then grows with practices like that. And I want to be very careful in saying meditation is the practice, but the practice is less important than the quality. The quality that we're after is stillness. So when we infuse our practices with stillness, that's when we transform them to something that allows us to access not just our somatic experience, but access non-reactivity, access that the very core where we do react. So whether it's yoga, sauna, cold exposure, exercise, even running, dancing, whatever practice that you do engage in, to take your attention and say, I'm going to go inward. I'm going to notice the sensations that I feel without reacting. And we can even do this while we're dancing, because we might be dancing and there'd be an impulse to do something, and we can stay with that impulse. So is it a little harder than meditation? Yes, possibly. But the key takeaway here is that the gold that we're digging for, what we're actually looking for is stillness, not just to meditate. This isn't a check the box item of, okay, I've done my 15 minutes. It's not about that. It's, am I practicing a different way of relating to my present moment experience? That is at the very core of it. And then we move outwards from the personal practices. We can then take that somatic connection, right? So it's a lot easier to start with lifestyle choices that we're already doing, personal practices that are in a safe, contained environment. All of a sudden, if we try to do this somatic connection while we're in relationship with other people, good luck. because there's now multiple nervous systems, there's projections, there's a lot of information that the nervous system has to process. It's really hard to stay somatically connected right at the start when you're in relationship with other people. So this slow outward process allows us to learn how to continually stay anchored in the body and then to move outward with that somatic connection. The next aspect or the next context of Somawise is remaining connected to self. What is the relationship we have with our own thoughts, with our own beliefs, with our own sense of self? From there, can I maintain this somatic connection while I'm in relationship with my son, with my colleague, with my partner, with my friend? And slowly moving outward until the moment comes where you're living life from the inside out. I call it that. That instead of you perceiving the world as that's happening, you start looking at the world from this way first. How is this moment impacting my body? And then and only then do I consider the rest of the experience, the rest of the information. And so it makes it more manageable to learn how to connect to the body, to learn how to slowly allow somatic connection to permeate into the various and different contexts of everyday life, because there's certain contexts where it may be the last aspect for it to touch. And I describe it as one of my teachers, non-duality teacher Rupert Spira, who's in the UK. He describes the process of becoming awakened, this having these insights. It's like turning off a fan. When you turn off the fan and you have that eureka moment, that experience of actually, it is important to be connected to my body, but that's just intellectual acceptance. It still takes a long time for the fan to slow down and eventually stop. And that process is the process of practice. And slowly, that somatic connection, slowly that understanding of what's happening internally will permeate into the different contexts of everyday life. It does not happen instantaneously. It does not happen easily. It happens over time with practice, with surrender, with acceptance, with with the sprinkle of all the little qualities that are required as we come back to ourselves.
Wow, I heard so many things. So my mind now is scattered and wants to pick up on everything. But I would start with something which I think it's really, see, my mind thinks, but also I perceive it as being very important for everyone, not only for me and you or for people who are watching or will be watching this. It's that thing that we are not attached to an objective. It's not our objective to feel the tension, but it's this idea to prepare ourselves to a different view, to look from inside out, which I smiled so much when you said that, because there is a Nordic practice, very, very ancient. I don't know if you have heard of it. It's called Insa A. They actually, they actually have this word. They have a word for looking from inside out. And they practice, when you are born, you are into this practice. You are taught, because we come looking outside in. It's our as also Gabor and many other scientists and writers and psychotherapists say today, we learn by being mirrored. So this is the outside in.
Yes.
And this is how we can survive, right?
Yes. It's a survival mechanism, exactly. And so this is why it requires conscious or seemingly conscious effort and practice to come back to this original state of being inside out. And sometimes it's confused. Sometimes it might be perceived, or especially the mind might perceive, well, if you're only worried about your sensations in your body, it's such a selfish way of living. You're not going to be, it's going to be, it's limited in some way. And I think the opposite. I think that it allows us to have a bigger appreciation of the present moment and everything that's actually happening. If we start here, then we just stay with our thoughts and we stay in our imagination. If we start from the inside out, we start with, okay, this is how the moment is impacting my body. Then there's also, okay, this is my thoughts. Now that I'm anchored in my body, I can consider my thoughts without believing my thoughts and attaching to them and automatically believing they're real and reacting to them as if they are real. So now we have this first input, which is, okay, my body, this is what's happening in my mind. And if we are anchored in our body in relationship with others, okay, I have a sense of what's happening in their body because we can become more attuned to others' emotions and sensations when we are attuned to our own. So now we can consider the third data point. Okay, this is what's happening in their body. And oh, this is the thought that they're having. So now we have a more complete assessment and understanding of what's actually happening right now, rather than you're doing this to me, and in their person's mind, you're doing this to me. And it removes the rigidity of that thought process and that reaction and says, actually, let's have a more complete understanding of what's actually happening in this present moment. And with that more complete understanding, we can navigate this with more clarity, with more peace, with more understanding, with more calmness. And that is a very empowering position to be in relationship with others, rather than, again, if we're stuck in our mind, we're not actually in relationship with that person. We're in relationship with a thought about that person. And essentially, we're in relationship with a conditioned reaction or a memory of that person. So we don't even see the person in front of us. All we see is our conditioning or a memory of that person, which is essentially our conditioning of that person.
And the other person doesn't see us either, right?
Exactly right.
Because in the end, I was hearing you, right? So it's not about reacting. It's not the thought, look, what is she, he, them doing to me, the situation, the position I'm in. And this one is to react, because if I see what they do, then I react. But
Yes.
then we have the other approach, right? If we rephrase it and we get to be responsible, then our thoughts may become, look, what am I doing to myself?
Yes.
And when we have this thought, right, when we actually get, okay, we are not illuminated, every one of us, but just the thought that the fact that now I'm angry or I am feeling guilty or whatever, which is a perception, not a feeling, but still, it's not because what you did.
Yes.
It's because of what I did.
Yes.
It gives us another perspective. It gives
Yes.
us another perspective even when we are happy, right? Because
Yes.
if I think you made me happy, then
Yes.
if you leave or I don't
Mhm.
know, then what's going to happen to me?
Yes. But that perspective is having those additional perspectives and reference points is so important in the process of understanding, of self-understanding and self-awareness. So I think you're tapping into something really important. And you said not every one of us is illuminated. And my argument is every moment, because to me, illumination or enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, that is a process. That's not a permanent state. So if we have a moment of impulse and here comes the conditioned reaction, here comes the programmed destiny that I was going to do because that's what my conditioning said I was going to do. If that's the pathway that it's moving towards, a moment of enlightenment is any moment where you can feel it and choose something different, to choose something that's more aligned with your present moment values, intentions, um, integrity, morality, whatever it is that you stand for. What are the qualities within you that you want to cultivate? When I work with people and we talk about, well, what do I do instead of my reaction? What do I do instead of this thing? Well, think about who you want to be and the beliefs that you want to feed about yourself. If you stand for authenticity, what does authenticity look like in this moment? If you stand for high integrity, what does integrity look like in this moment? Because that might be very different than the self-protective reactions that you might typically do. Well, part of me wants to punish that person because they hurt me. Okay, well, is that in line? Now that you have the choice, now that you're sitting and reflecting, now that you're able to stay with the pain of that experience, what does authenticity look like? No, authenticity might look like sitting with this, accepting and seeing that they're also in pain. And that moment, that beautiful moment, you've changed your destiny. You've changed the complete trajectory of yourself and that relationship. That is a moment of enlightenment. That is illumination. What else would it be other than to find that different path in the face of this intensity, in the face of the intensity of this trigger? Because triggers are uncomfortable. Triggers are powerful. And on this journey of becoming Somawise, one of the first thing that people come into contact with is, wow, it's humbling to feel the extent of my reactivity, because the mind has an intention. I'm going to change. I'm going to change. And then they feel the first wave of reactivity. And even though their mind says, no, I don't have to do that, I'm not going to do that, they react and they yell and they scream and they do it, whatever the reaction is. And you're like, wow, I didn't realize it was so strong that even though my mind doesn't want to do it, it happens anyway. That is humbling.
And I might add, and it's different than humility, right? Because
Yes.
thinking of humbleness as humility, it's something that sometimes stays in the way. At least that's my experience, my
Yes.
own, and also the people that I'm working also with. It's like, oh, but I don't want to be in
Yes.
that position. So this is bad for me. While humbling means just to give up the right to punish,
Yes.
to
Yes, that's a really lovely distinction. In this sense, humbling is almost intended to just recognize what we're up against, the sheer gravity of wow, maybe my conscious thoughts weren't as strong as I thought they were. Maybe this thing that I'm facing is a lot bigger than I first imagined. And that does make it puts us back down to a grounded sense of, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm managing.
and sometimes when you are into it, it's not that you give up your mind. It's just that your mind becomes even more knowledgeable, if I may say so, and not learning or teaching, because this knowing is inside of us. We are born with it. And the mind just gets what it needs, right?
Yes.
It doesn't have to look so desperately
No,
outside.
no.
Yeah.
In fact, the mind is learning, and it can everything you need to learn. Let me put it this way. Everything we need to learn is happening now if we're paying attention. From this perspective of somatic connection, rather than being stuck on a single sort of cyclical thought, the mind is actually free. And that freer mind, now its potential for creativity, its potential for analysis, its potential for its pure power, we actually unlock it. So again, Somawise is not to be confused with a demonization. This is not the mind is bad. What I'm saying is that when we stay anchored here, we're no longer a slave to this automatic thought process, and the mind is free to do what it does best. And I think we unleash the mind's true power to create, to produce, whatever it may be, when it's not constantly being burdened by reacting, when we can stay in the body and use the mind as a tool, consciously using it and implementing when necessary, when appropriate. And now it really reveals just how much beautiful power that the mind can have.
And thank you for saying that, because it's not that by being or reading or applying Somawise or somatic practices, it means that our mind is bad. It
No.
only means that she was in training, like in
Yes.
intensive
Yes.
trainings ever
Yes.
since we were born. So
Yes.
that's at least how I was raised and
Yeah.
our society.
And I'm going to add one more detail to that. It also removes the identity that we have with our mind, because one of the biggest things that people keep people stuck or in a state of distress is identification with our thoughts as if they are real and as if they are us. So one of the inadvertent or accidental consequences when we live in our body, we see a thought for a thought. Oh, that's a thought. It's not me. It's a thought that I'm having. And that separation is empowering because that allows us to be somewhere other than our mind or even our body. So I am not my mind. My mind is just having a process. My mind is having a thought. And from that place, we can choose when to follow and when to penetrate with our mind and when to say, no, that's not helpful for me. I've been down that path before. I know where it goes. I don't need to follow that thought. It's not even me. That thought of, oh, my partner is doing something evil towards me. So I'm going to follow that and create the story, and I'm going to believe that story, and I'm going to stay in that story until I'm reacting to my partner with viciousness and anger and animosity because in my mind, I believe her to be doing something evil to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we do that, and I am also asking, this is my understanding, not only with your book, which was great for me to find, but it was so beautiful for me to find your book, because it actually unites all these perspectives, because it's like, it's a training book for me. It's a training book for my body, for my sensations, for my emotions, because it's like, okay, we are used to go running or go to the gym or whatever, and we work certain muscles and so on. Obviously, if I run, my legs will be stronger than my arms if I only run. So if I use my mind so much, of course, she is much more in shape than
Yes.
our other, let's say, parts, because we are mind, we are body, we are emotions, we are
Yes.
sensation. So for me, this was the big aha moment in your book, because you provide the I wouldn't say unification, but I would say rebalancing. It's like now you can rest, dear mind. Like you have
Yeah.
worked so many years. Take some rest, your muscle will stay. It's
Yes.
scientifically proved because our
Yeah.
mind meets the proof.
Yeah.
And now let the little one
Yeah.
get in shape too. So it's not we give up something.
Yes. Beautiful.
So yeah, for me that was the big summary of your book, which is wonderful, and it's going to be in Romanian. So I'm guessing my question, because I have a question also, even if my mind scatters now. My question is also, when we are also doing things which we are not aware we are doing.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I have friends, myself included, that one of a sudden, after we worked in corporations and do
Yeah.
P&Ls and whatever, we started painting. We painted our walls, or we started dancing, and it's not like we want it on purpose to
Yeah.
train our body.
Yeah.
But this is also an exercise, right? To look back of this wise, right, body that you have, because you didn't thought I will go dance and
No.
then I will feel better. No,
No.
you just felt like going to
Yes.
dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is part of this intuitive sense of learning how to listen to the body's needs, and and to and the most important part of that process is that feedback and that thought. Wow, I danced, I gave my body this input, and this is how I felt after. Maybe my body was asking for this and I wasn't even listening. And then if we start paying attention, we start learning and seeing, oh wow, I think my body really needs movement. I think my body really needs dancing today. And then we start honoring the body's needs. And as we honor the body's needs, here's the thing, the mind will stop getting so crazy, because most of the reactive thoughts of the mind is just reacting to stress in the body. We talked about the gut being a second brain earlier. That lets us know. And imagine the substances that are going through our gut. The most important interaction that we have with the environment goes through our gut. It's the food we eat. This means that if the gut 9 times more activity than the brain, that means what we eat impacts our mood and how we feel far more than we think. And so here we have this opportunity to start listening to the body, listening to our lifestyle choices. I wonder what will give this brain, which is 9 times more active than this one. I wonder what will give this brain what it needs to thrive. And I'll pay attention. And just like dancing, you might say, oh, I think my body needs some fresh veggies right now. I think that's what I'm feeling. I think my body is needing this. Rather than writing down your diet saying, this is what I have to eat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or this is how I have to exercise and move 3 times a week. Instead, it's, what does my body need right now? Okay, let's give it that and see how it responds. It becomes this interaction because we start treating our body as if it's under our care, as if it's another person. It's part of us, but we start personifying it. Oh, body, what do you need today? And I have dialogues and conversations, and I pay attention, and I wait and listen to what feels right. And that has come from 25 years of a slow and progressive, with different contexts, but a 25-year journey back to myself to really understand what's actually happening here. What's happening beneath the hood? What's making me tick? So, and now it's arrived at Somawise, which is, a lot of modalities, a lot of practitioners, a lot of people talk about the importance of connecting to the body. I think there's limited or few resources that actually provide the template, to provide the program, to provide the techniques, tools, and strategies. Like, this is what connecting to the body actually looks like. This is what it can look like. This is what the journey looks like. This is what the small steps look like. And now it's up to you to connect to your body. And that's what Somawise is all about, learning how to listen to your body.
And I would add, it's also something that you lived on. It's not something that you have built from an intellectual perspective. And there was a wise Sufi poet who never wrote a word in his life, but he is quite renowned in the community. And so at a point in time, someone asked him, well, why aren't you writing? Because other people were writing whatever he was saying. And he said, well, how could I stop and write? I will miss living. So I guess that's the thing, right? It's a metaphor, of course,
Yes.
but that's the thing. If you didn't live it, if you didn't practice it, you will talk again for the mind.
Yes.
So I guess this is the big difference. And I think this is what you will show us in Bucharest on the 3rd of August,
Yeah,
right?
well, yes, well, in Bucharest, I'm excited that, nearly 6 months or maybe more, 9 months ago, Editura Herald reached out and asked, hey, we'd like to translate Somawise into Romanian. And I was a little blown away. And I never imagined that, a few months later, I would be planning a workshop, a stillness workshop, a change through stillness workshop, and a book launch event in Bucharest. So I'm excited and thrilled to be coming to Bucharest in less than a month and sharing Somawise with a new audience. And what's exciting is Petronella Rotar has written the foreword, and she's read the English version. Now she's reading the Romanian version, and it's lovely to hear that when you read the book in your mother tongue, English is her second language. English is will be most of the Romanian readers' second language, but when they read it in their mother tongue, my hope is that it has the same impact that it had on her. And she said the words land differently. Some of the words that once it's translated into Romanian, I was able to receive it in a very different way. And I said, fantastic. That's such a beautiful experience, because my intention with Somawise, again, it wasn't just here's this information, do this information. It was expressed and written in a way that, specifically in a way for people to have a deeper connection with the words and a deeper connection with themselves as they're reading it, so that it's more relatable than just information. And I do think that stories are far, far more relatable and have the capacity to touch us, to touch our body, right? This is what we're after. We don't want to just stimulate the mind. I wanted to go in and pluck at the heartstrings and see if we can induce this felt sense, even just from reading this book and the story. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that makes two of us, because I'm looking forward to read it in Romanian, and I'm totally aligned with what you said and what Petronella said to you, because I also had many books that I read in English before they were translated, and then when I read it in Romanian, it was a different thing, and I think it's aligned with Somawise in a way, because when you speak your mother language, when you read in your native language, you are not so tensed to translate, to get
Yes.
the words, and then it's this relaxation, this me time and opportunity to not only have it here, but also have it landed in your body.
Yeah.
So That's my guess. And I think it's a great opportunity for everyone. I'm guessing, and I'm also aware we will announce everyone when this is ready to go and how they can register for the workshop. I'm really grateful to Herald also because they do publish and they put their soul into publishing, if
Yeah.
I may say so.
Yeah,
So
I've had that
I
experience. It's been amazing working with them, and it's been amazing. It's a partnership and a relationship. It's not just a transaction, and it's really lovely to have been a part of. And yeah, the workshop will actually be at Artmark headquarters in Bucharest, and the link is at somawisehealinglab.com to start registering for the workshop.
Oh yeah, see, my mind already. I will post it afterwards, so everyone you will have access to register in advance to this. I would say unique workshop. It's your first one in Romania, right?
It's the first time I'm coming to Bucharest, so I'm
Oh,
really
wow.
excited. And I'm gotta be honest, I'm gonna be a tourist for at least one of the days, and I want to go check out the Bran Castle. So did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Bran. Yeah, it's
Bran
okay.
Castle.
Bran
Perfect.
Castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you will see some Dracula in
Yeah,
there
there
or
it is.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so wonderful to have you here, Luke, and to have a flavor of Somawise. And because I don't want to miss any minute, so we still have some more minutes. I would ask you because I know we, including myself, we are all curious of your recommendation of small little steps, maybe something that we can choose, not we
Mm.
have to, but we can choose to do today in
Yes.
order to befriend our
Yes.
body.
Yes. I think one of the things that we might one of the first ways to start disconnecting from identification with the mind and reconnecting with the body is to start becoming aware of when the mind is thinking. I know that sounds strange, but most of the time we're thinking and we don't even know we're thinking. This is why when people start meditating, they're like, I can't meditate. My mind is always busy. As soon as I close my eyes, I'm just thinking, thinking, thinking. And my response to that is, no, your mind is always thinking, and you just didn't realize it until you stopped moving. So that's what the mind is always doing, if that's what happens when we close our eyes and become still. However, during the day, what we might invite is if we notice ourselves getting lost in thought or lost in dreams or lost in some ruminating, stressful thought pattern, to notice it and say, oh, my mind is there. And in those moments to practice, okay, if my mind is having a thought, our experience is like two sides of a same coin, right? So on one side of the coin is a thought, on the other side of the coin, on that same experience, is a sensation or experience in the body. So if we notice ourselves, oh, there it is, that thought again, that thought that I'm trying to move away from. And in that moment, to simply pause and come to the body and say, I wonder what's happening in my body as my mind is having that thought. And there's always a connection. If the mind is having something distressing, the body there's tension somewhere. And if we practice resting our attention here, at first it'll be numb. At first it might be blank. At first you might not feel anything from the neck down, but that's not the point. The point is to start practicing aligning and resting our attention here and just waiting. Okay. And then we might go back to our normal day, and then we might be living our day, and all of a sudden the mind, we find ourselves in that loop again, whatever it means. Oh, there's the loop again. Okay, I wonder what's happening in my body. And to start that practice of checking in, to start that practice of coming back to the body, because when the mind is in the distressed state, when the mind is in its cyclical ruminating pattern, the safest place to put our attention is in the body, because this is where we're able to track and follow the sensations that are causing the reactivity. And if we're able to stay with the sensations until they peak and they dissolve and pass away, the thought pattern automatically disappears. Because, oh, okay, it feels more relaxed and tension free now. Okay. And all of a sudden there's no distressing thought anymore. And why is that? Because we went to the source rather than fiddling with the thoughts, which is just a consequence of a distressed body. We went right to the source and said, okay, body, what is it that you're trying to express here? What is it that I'm not allowing you to pass through? And when we allow the body to pass through that experience, was that it? Oh, I feel okay. And that begins that long process, gentle, uncomfortable, beautiful, astounding, life-transforming process of connecting to ourselves and connecting to the body.
And to see ourselves, because I
And
was listening to you and thinking of that movie that I saw 7 times with Avatar when they say, I see you. So it's
yes,
like, I see you. And
yes,
that's exactly what I was hearing and all my body was experiencing. It's a freedom in there,
it is. It is. This
a
is where
big
the
one.
Michael Brown uses the word intimacy. Into me, I see. And I love that. That intimacy is our capacity to see into ourselves. And as we are able to see into ourselves, then we can have that intimacy with others. So beautiful. Lovely way to end today's talk. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Luke. Into me to see. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I will only say it doesn't feel like saying anything. I think this is the big aha for everyone if you are watching, just to experience how you feel when you say into me to see.
Into me, I see. Lovely.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Luke, for being with us. We look forward the 3rd of August. And everybody, I will just post in 1 minute the link to register. I guess it's limited to the number of people attending, Luke. So
The workshop will be Thursday from, I believe, about 1 or 2 to 5. So it's a three-hour workshop. And then after the workshop, it'll be book signing and book launch. So then it'll be the book launch event. And the book launch event, the capacity will be a lot more. The workshop does have limited spaces. So yes.
So no pressure, but I will register after that and then I will put the link. See, I have the advantage. Thank you so much, Luke, for being here. And now I will switch to Romanian to thanks also in Romanian for people who were here with us. Așa că vă mulțumesc că ați fost cu noi aici. Vă mulțumesc și celor care vă veți uita la înregistrare. If you have, and now back to English, if you have any questions and you want to address them, feel free to write to Luke, to me. We are here. So thank you very much, everyone, and may you have a wonderful day ahead. It just started out. So thank you.
Thank you, Monica, for having me. And thank you, everyone.